Welcome to Reddit and Regret, where we bring you the most shocking and unforgettable stories of betrayal, secrets, and revenge. Today's story is about a man who trusted his best friend at work, only to discover that the same friend was secretly sabotaging his career. What started as office politics spiraled into lies, betrayal, and a twist that no one saw coming. As you listen, drop a comment below telling us where you're tuning in from. And let us know the moment in this story where you think the betrayal cut the deepest.
When I found out I had been passed over for the promotion, I didn't just feel disappointed. I felt gutted, hollowed out from the inside like the floor had dropped beneath me. I had spent 3 years clawing my way up that company, staying late while everyone else went home, answering emails at 2 in the morning, taking on projects no one else wanted. I believed I had it in the bag. My boss even hinted during our last quarterly review that I was next in line. So when the announcement came and the role went to someone else, I couldn't breathe. People clapped politely, some even looked at me with sympathy, but all I saw was red. I shook the hand of the guy who got it, plastered on a smile, and congratulated him like it didn't burn me alive. Then I walked to the restroom, locked myself in a stall, and tried to swallow the rage pounding through my chest. The worst part wasn't losing the promotion. It was not knowing why. I went home that night and sat in the dark, staring at my laptop, replaying the past year. I knew my numbers were strong. I had the best record in the department. My boss, Claire, had praised me openly more than once. I thought maybe it was office politics, maybe they just wanted someone with a louder personality. But then I remembered something. Weeks earlier, I had overheard 2 coworkers whispering that I was not as reliable as I looked. At the time, I brushed it off as jealousy. Now it gnawed at me. The next morning, I decided to dig. I stayed late at the office, waiting until most people had left. I pulled up some shared folders, looking for any sign of projects I might have mishandled. That was when I stumbled across something strange. An email chain forwarded by accident, buried in a subfolder. My name was all over it. Lines like, "Missed deadlines, doesn't work well with others, late to meetings." None of it was true. The kicker? The sender's initials matched those of someone I trusted more than anyone else at work. Mark. My friend. My so-called best friend. We had started at the company around the same time, shared lunches, even grabbed beers after work. He knew about my family struggles, about the bills I was juggling, about how badly I needed that promotion. He was the one I vented to when things got tough. And he had been stabbing me in the back the whole time. My first reaction was disbelief. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe someone else used his login. But the tone of the emails was his, word for word. Phrases I had heard him use 100 times over drinks. There was no mistake. He had been feeding my boss a steady stream of poison about me. I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I watched. Over the next week, I noticed things I had ignored before. The way he lingered near Claire's office, the way she smiled a little too warmly when he cracked jokes, the way his projects suddenly seemed to get priority. Rumors had floated around about Claire being close with certain people, but I had never believed them. Now I started to wonder. The pieces fit too well. He wasn't just sabotaging me to climb higher. He was cozying up to Claire, maybe even more than that. That was why she believed his lies. That was why she ignored my record, my numbers, my years of loyalty. She was protecting him because he was more than an employee to her. The thought made me sick. Not just because of the betrayal, but because I had been so blind. I trusted Mark. I respected Claire. And both of them had been playing me like a fool. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, plotting my next move. I wasn't about to walk away quietly. If Mark thought he could bury me, he had no idea who he was dealing with. The next day at work, I kept my head down, pretending to grind away at spreadsheets while every nerve in my body buzzed with anger. Mark strolled past my desk like nothing had happened, dropping a donut on the corner like he always did, flashing that easy smile that used to feel like friendship. I looked at the donut, then at him, and all I could think was how fake it all was. The emails replayed in my head word for word. He had called me unreliable, said I. Struggled with deadlines. Lies. And then he had smiled in my face. I needed proof. Something undeniable. Emails could be dismissed as misunderstandings, but if I caught them together, if I could show exactly why Claire believed him, then maybe I could finally put the puzzle together. So I started staying later. Not working, not really. Watching. From the glow of my computer screen, I tracked who walked past whose office, who lingered after hours. Mark always seemed to have some reason to stop by Claire's desk, even when it was late and most of the floor was empty. Once I saw her laugh and touch his arm. My stomach twisted. It wasn't professional. It wasn't casual. It was personal. By Friday, I couldn't take it anymore. I told myself I was leaving early, but instead, I ducked into the stairwell and waited. Around 8, long after most people had left, I heard footsteps in the hall. I cracked the door open just enough to see Mark and Claire. Together. She was holding a file, but their voices weren't about work. They were low, intimate, filled with the kind of familiarity no boss and employee should share. I shut the door before they saw me, my pulse hammering. It was worse than I thought. He wasn't just sabotaging me for ambition. He had leverage. He had her trust wrapped up in something far messier than performance reviews. That weekend I couldn't eat. Couldn't focus. I paced my apartment until the floor creaked under my steps. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was a trap. I was the only one standing in the way of them, and they had made sure to bury me with lies. On Monday, I walked into HR. I thought maybe if I explained the situation, if I showed them the emails, they'd believe me. The woman behind the desk listened politely, her pen scratching notes, but her face gave nothing away. She asked for copies, for context, for any proof beyond what I had. I handed over everything I had printed, watching her eyes scan the pages. When she looked up, her voice was calm, almost too calm. "We'll review this," she said. "But I'll be honest. These kinds of complaints get tricky when personal relationships are involved." The words hit me like ice water. She knew. Or at least she suspected. The rumor mill had reached her too. But instead of looking shocked, she looked tired, like this wasn't the first time she'd had to navigate Claire's behavior. I left HR's office with a pit in my stomach. If they already suspected something and still gave Mark the edge, then this went deeper than favoritism. Claire had power. She had the ability to bury anything I brought forward. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, scrolling through every shared file, every document I could access. I looked at timestamps, project logs, emails that didn't line up. And then I saw it. Mark had signed off on a proposal the same day I had turned it in. My name had been scrubbed from the header. The formatting was identical to mine. He hadn't just lied about me. He had stolen my work and claimed it as his own. My chest tightened. Proof. Real proof. Something they couldn't explain away with charm or office whispers. I leaned back in my chair, adrenaline surging. This wasn't just about a promotion anymore. This was about war. And if Claire wanted to protect him, then she would burn with him. I barely slept that night. The proposal sat on my desk like a loaded gun. Every line, every chart, every phrase was mine. I remembered the late nights hunched over my laptop, the coffee rings staining my notes, the frustration when the numbers refused to balance until they finally did. And there it was, my work, stripped of my name and paraded as Mark's. The next morning, I printed everything. My version. His version. Side by side, identical except for the header. I slid them into a folder, tucked it under my arm, and walked into the office with a calmness I didn't feel. Every step felt rehearsed, like I was marching toward a performance where the audience didn't know the script but I did. Mark greeted me like always, a slap on the back, a smile that made my blood boil. I forced myself to nod, to sit down, to pretend. But I kept glancing toward Claire's office. The blinds were half drawn, the glow of her lamp soft against the glass. She looked up once, caught my eye, and gave me the kind of smile bosses use when they think they still own your loyalty. By lunchtime, I had made my decision. I walked into HR, dropped the folder on the desk, and said, "This is theft. And if you ignore it, I will not." The woman behind the desk raised an eyebrow, flipped through the pages, and her expression shifted. She saw it. There was no denying it. She asked me to wait while she called Claire in. My pulse spiked. This was it. Claire entered a few minutes later, her heels sharp against the tile, her perfume filling the room. She glanced at me, then at the folder, and her face froze for half a second before she smoothed it over. She flipped through the papers, then looked up at me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "This is a misunderstanding," she said. "No," I shot back. "This is theft. And I want it on record." Mark arrived moments later, summoned like a dog to its owner. He looked at me, then at Claire, and I could see the silent panic in his eyes. He tried to laugh it off, to say maybe files got mixed up. But the HR rep's eyes narrowed, and she pressed him harder. I thought that would be the breaking point, that the truth would finally crack open. But Claire leaned forward, resting her hand lightly on the desk, and said, "Let's not escalate this unnecessarily. We'll review it internally." It wasn't just dismissal. It was protection. The message was clear. Whatever happened, she would shield him. That was when I realized I was playing the wrong game. Proof alone wouldn't save me if the people in charge were invested in burying it. If Claire had something to lose, then she would fight to the end to silence me. I walked out of HR that day with a smile that mirrored hers. She thought she had won. Mark thought he had dodged it again. But I knew something they didn't. Affairs leave trails. Over the next week, I paid attention like never before. Late nights when Mark's car was parked in the far corner of the lot long after hours. The mornings when Claire arrived at the same time, hair damp, smile wider than usual. Conversations that dropped to whispers when I passed by. I didn't need rumors anymore. I had eyes. One night I waited. I sat in my car across from the office, lights off, watching. At 9:30, Claire walked out, her coat draped over her arm. Mark followed 10 minutes later. He glanced around nervously before slipping into the same direction she had gone. I followed at a distance, heart pounding, until I saw them disappear into a hotel 2 blocks away. My hands gripped the wheel so hard I thought I might break it. Proof of theft was one thing. Proof of an affair with her subordinate was something else entirely. The promotion they had stolen from me was about to cost them everything. I spent the weekend building my case. I printed the emails, the duplicated project, and the photos I had taken outside the hotel. Each piece was damning on its own, but together they told a story even Claire could not erase. By Sunday night, the folder was thick with evidence, and I felt a calm I hadn't known in weeks. This wasn't revenge for the promotion anymore. This was survival, justice, and maybe even redemption. On Monday, I walked straight past my desk and into the office of the regional director. He was a man who rarely looked up from his phone, but the moment I laid the folder in front of him, his attention sharpened. He flipped through the pages slowly, his brow furrowing deeper with every piece of evidence. When he reached the photos, he set the papers down and leaned back in his chair. "Close the door," he said. The meeting lasted nearly an hour. I explained everything. How Mark had undermined me with fake complaints, how Claire had shielded him, how the proposal I had written had been stolen. I kept my tone even, steady, but inside I burned. When I finished, the director sat in silence for a long time. Finally, he nodded. He told me they would launch an internal investigation immediately. By the end of the week, whispers were spreading through the office like wildfire. Claire stopped making her rounds. Mark avoided eye contact. HR scheduled private meetings one by one, pulling people in for questions. Every time a door shut, the tension in the air thickened. I kept my head down, but inside I counted the days. 2 Fridays later, it happened. Claire's office was cleared out overnight. Mark's desk sat empty by noon. The company email that morning was vague, filled with language about policy violations and Leadership transitions. But everyone knew. The glances, the hushed conversations, the nervous laughter said it all. The golden pair had fallen. That afternoon, the regional director called me back in. He thanked me for coming forward, told me the company valued integrity, and then he offered me the promotion I had been denied. The title, the pay bump, the recognition, it was everything I had worked for. And yet, as I shook his hand, the victory felt heavier than I expected. Because the truth is, betrayal doesn't just vanish when the betrayers are gone. It lingers. It stains the trust you once had in people. Every smile from a coworker now felt like a mask. Every word of praise from management sounded rehearsed. I had won, yes, but the cost was knowing how easily I had been played. On my first day in the new office, I sat behind Claire's old desk and looked out at the floor. People nodded politely, some with genuine warmth, others with unease. I wondered how many of them had known, how many had looked the other way while Mark and Claire twisted the rules. I wondered how many of them would do the same to me if it meant climbing higher. Mark never reached out. Neither did Claire. The last I heard, she had left the city altogether. He tried to land at another firm, but word travels fast, and doors closed before they opened. In the end, they had each other. That was the only consolation they had left. As for me, I stayed. I worked harder than ever, not to prove myself to anyone else, but because I refused to let their betrayal define me. And still, late at night when the office was quiet, I sometimes caught myself staring at the empty desk where Mark used to sit. I thought of the jokes, the donuts, the trust that once felt real. The promotion was mine. The victory was mine. But the friendship I lost and the blind faith I once carried would never return. Some promotions come with pay raises. Mine came with scars.